It
is now.
Okay, thank you. Oh, you missed my whole lovely introduction. So we come through, again, the 7 sessions. The recordings for all these sessions will be, you can find them on the project website, which is here, along with a PDF of the materials. As we're coming through, I know there was a lot of questions within some of the sessions about that. Just wanting to make sure they had review and some access into some of those materials. So that will be available, and through your registration, we have your emails, so we'll let you know and kind of be aware of when those materials are available out on the website. And as the project team completes a number of different items, we'll continually update and post to that website. So be sure to visit it often. Make it your homepage. Just whenever you open up your browser, come straight to that project page. So we'll start with just a session recap. Walking through our opening session, we had a number of different speakers. We had Mikhail Pelfrey from the Division of Planning. We had Brian Wright from Owensboro, and then we had Chandler Duncan go through and talk about the welcome, a little bit of background. Brian provided some background and origination of this study, and then Chandler walked through some of the tasks and projects, overview and objectives of the projects and this summit. And the takeaway here was just to provide an understanding of the project and set a baseline groundwork understanding of what's going to be going on and how this will influence, how the outcomes will influence Kentucky. Next up, starting on Tuesday, we had Ken Erickson present State of the Ports. And Ken, you can chime in anytime you want to here, but an overview of Ken's work was just Ken actually went out and did some in-person interviews with all 11 ports, the 7 existing ports and the 4 developing ones, and provided just a review and summary of some of the materials that he found, and conveying it back around, provide that identification and understanding of the ports. Talked about the hinterland, some of the market area of the ports, and how it overlapped with Kentucky within some of the neighboring states, and how we looked and understood some of that, some of those overlaps, and many of the talked about some port specific, some of the infrastructure within the ports, and exceeding the design life, and some of the refurbishment, and what we're going to be getting into, again, within some of the next steps, which I'll preview in a little bit, just some of those needs assessments that are going to be going on at the next phase of this project. Ken, anything else to add on that?
Yeah, thanks, David. Good to be back with everybody. And I guess I would say, remembering that the ports operate within context of a global economy, and still compete with other ports across the river system. There's still a very much a collaborative approach, or a very complementary view among the Kentucky ports. But I think it's very important to understand that there is these overlapping areas that do take place as far as the hinterlands, but that, in light of the world economies, how they work, the demand for various commodities that the United States has to offer as feedstock into further processing or consumption, and likewise what we would import and do similarly, but then also around special cargo projects and other things. There's a lot of different ways to be looking at things, kind of that state of the port, and where it kind of ebbs and flows with the economic realities, not only just with the U.S. economy, but also elsewhere, and even with respect to trade policy. It gets to be very important that way. So I think those are some of the other key points, but there's many others, but we'll get into those as we get further into the study. And I look forward to questions or other people's insights as well.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you, Ken. Next up, we had the current freight movements in the market, and this was conducted by Paul Bingham, who is also with IHS Market, like Ken, and Chandler Duncan, who's with Metro Analytics, and just went through, looked at some of the Transearch data that we're using within this study, how it's going to be utilized, and the resource that it is, what is in the data and what does it mean, understanding some of that information and the movements, breaking it down and looking at some of those movements across Kentucky. The takeaways here are just understanding some of those commodity movements, having an order of magnitude to really understand what's going on and how we're going to look at some of those future growths within the state, and some of the dominant cargo modes in the area, whether it was, we looked at truck and rail, and in some areas air, but predominantly looking at the port, and also looking at the divertible freight that was potentially, some of the numbers and what we think can potentially move to the ports by commodity. So, Chandler, did you have anything to add on this one? Anything else that we need to kind of take away from the current freight movements?
There will be a complete report on that. We talked about a lot of that at the regional level, and there's a lot more to come with that, with modeling, with forecasting. And we definitely heard loud and clear that people are very interested in getting hands-on access to those data, and we'll be looking at ways to make that possible. So that was just a really interesting discussion.
Excellent.
So, yeah, that was
thank you. Next up, we had economic development with Riverports. This was a good session with Christina Slattery and Kevin Johns. Christina's with the Cabinet for Economic Development, and Kevin is Economic Development Specialist here with Metro Analytics. Provided an overview of economic development and the impact that's been occurring in Kentucky, and some of those existing incentive programs and some of the resources within the state. And Kevin took some of the questions. We had a breakout session, took some of the questions and kind of expanded and looked at the topics and some of those potentials to consider into the future as we look at the relationship and the potential for the ports, how it influences economic development, some of the interactions between the agencies, between the ports and the agency, and we talked a lot about the return on investment, workforce, and a number of different items related to some of our three questions, which involved around the interaction between ports and economic development cabinet, and some of the performance measures and the potential to modify, or some of the changes that we thought that the group thought could be changed with the incentive programs. So we had a good conversation around all those. Sorry, I'm glancing through. I do see Kevin. Kevin, you can feel free to interject anything if I missed anything, but
I'm good.
All right. So it was a good conversation. That ended our Tuesday. Wednesday, this morning, we started with the funding options and opportunities. Jimmy McDonald led that conversation with Deb Collins from the Waterways Council, and Chad Dorsey from MARAD. It was a good conversation about some of the funding opportunity, or the funding levels at the federal level, and some of the evaluation that we've done for peer states, and some of those programs, and potentially how they what Kentucky could garner from that research moving forward. So the takeaways there were to provide that understanding, history of the programs, so understanding what funding levels have been done in the past and what we are looking for into the near future, and the importance of adequately funding the rehabilitation of some of the inland waterway system, and we'll see that again in the next session as well. So it was a very good session. Had some good polling questions and some good interaction. So Jimmy, I think you were on here. If you had any further comments, anything to add here?
Yeah, just a reminder to any of the stakeholders or port staff that may be on right now for this closeout that we're going to be putting together a comprehensive and have already started near finished comprehensive analysis of each of the peer states and each of the federal programs that the ports may have opportunities to utilize. And just like was mentioned on our call, it will look at many programs that may not have been typical, that you might not have thought of, like was mentioned, the EPA type or the DERA or diesel fuel emissions type grants, just giving you the information you need to at least look into those. And as we saw in the polling, one of the biggest issues is the matching requirements. So finding innovative ways to be able to best utilize the scarce resources that the local ports may have, the port authorities, and how can they best utilize those to make a lot to leverage these federal and state grants programs, and also how to institutionalize the programs so that they don't go away in a year where there might be potential funding issues related to impacts from things like COVID or economic downturns, where all of a sudden the trust funds begin to be robbed. You got to have programs in place that lock that funding down. It doesn't get taken back into a highway type program, but it stays and remains intermodal. As we heard from many other people, the importance of the system is intermodalism and being able to not let it just be a highway type program.
Excellent. Thank you, Jimmy. Next up, we just finished with the port interactions and logistics. We had a good panel discussion with Mike Steinhook from the Soy Transportation and Amanda Coates from the Port of New Orleans. And Tony First moderated that. It was a good discussion of the impacts of the dredging on the Mississippi. We had a lot of conversation about some containerized movements, and there's a lot of some of the inland system improvements that were going on the waterway system, and the various markets within Kentucky that influence some of the takeaways. I see Tony here, so you can. I'll go ahead and turn it over to you. We talked about a lot of the scales of economy with some of those bulk movements, and again, some of a lot of the influence of the containerized movements in commodities and backhaul potential.
Yeah, thank you, David. I think one of the things that came up a lot was the interconnectivity of the system. I mean, it was a theme that we have seen throughout all of this. I know Ken touched on that in his remarks. Paul touched on it in his. We saw it in what Jimmy put together. And so as Kentucky thinks about how they're going to improve their port system and make their ports more competitive, opening up the aperture and ensuring that what they do is in concert with the entire network. I mean, that whole conversation about the critical importance of the downstream project, the dredging of the lower Mississippi River, and the impact that had on the economic benefit of the farmers and how much more they took home from each bushel of soybeans was pretty demonstrable. So, throwing your weight behind projects that may not necessarily be in your jurisdiction can have huge benefits to your jurisdiction and just making sure that that aperture is open enough to be able to think about all of that, as opposed to just the microcosm of your ports.
Mhm.
Was kind of my big takeaway from that.
Yeah. And I think we had, again, kind of it went back to some of that predictable funding that we heard in Jimmy's session as well, was repeated in Tony's. So I think that was another overarching theme that we heard.
Yep, absolutely.
So thank you, Tony. And of course, comes to us with the closing session. So I'd like to take just a moment to thank everyone that I mentioned, all of our speakers, all of our moderators, everybody. At that point, I think the sessions went really well, and look forward to hearing any feedback and your thoughts about the projects and some of the sessions. But for the closing session, as we move forward, we're just going to look at some of the next steps within the project and what to anticipate moving forward. The project tasks, as we looked to kind of bring it back around, we looked at individually all 6 of the tasks under this project during the opening session. As we finish up task number 1 here, the existing role, we had a lot of baseline conversations, and we're going to move into some of that, the forecasting and engaging the stakeholders and looking at those needs and opportunities as we move forward. So some of those project tasks, of course, just finalizing the notes and materials from this summit, as we've, as I mentioned a number of times with the recordings and some of the materials. We're going to summarize the existing role of Kentucky Riverports and freight in the economy. That's going to be a document that's going to be available on the project website. So again, be sure to visit it and look at the material that we're going to be putting out there. Moving forward, we're going to forecast that trade and utilization of the ports. That's some of the stuff that we're going to, the next steps as we look at the data that we discussed, some of the Transearch data, looked at, push that into the model, or visualize that information, and look at some of the, use that to re-engage some of the stakeholders and really come in and talk about the needs and opportunities as we move forward for the ports. And as we talk to the executive directors of the ports, the developing and existing, as well as everyone, there was a lot of reach out during this session and people that were, wanted to have conversations and were interested in what we were doing. So, it'll be multifaceted. And all this will lead to the next step, which is actually our next summit, which is the economic change and Kentucky's transportation infrastructure, where we come back and look at a lot of the items that we found, a lot of the needs and opportunities, and we run through another set of sessions and talk about exactly this, where we've talked about the baseline during this summit. We're going to be talking about some of those needs and opportunities a little bit more into the next summit. So Chandler, do you have anything to add on this?
Yeah, not a whole lot to add, just to sort of echo that. Really appreciate everyone's participation and involvement, and really looking forward to the next steps. I know it's going to be for us as a consulting team, we're going to kind of go behind the scenes for a little while after we take everything that you've given us here. But we're going to be back, and we're going to be back talking about what the future holds and the ways that we can have a role in choosing that future, because there's a lot of really great opportunities out there.
Excellent. So just to make everyone aware, kind of our timeline, we expect that summit number 2 to appear sometime in February. So you can set your calendars, get ready for it. Again, just kind of a reminder, some of the goals that we have for this project and some of the outcomes and opportunities that we see. We're interested to, of course, engage the public and the stakeholders and really have this be a fruitful and productive project. So we'll come back, kind of finish with some closing remarks. I'll open it up to Jeremy Edgeworth, our the Freight Rail and Waterways Coordinator and the project manager on the KYTC side. So Jeremy, if you have any closing remarks.
Can do that. On behalf of the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet and as the project manager, I would like to thank everyone for attending the first of our 3 freight summits related to Kentucky's Riverport Highway and Rail Freight Study. To echo David's introductory comments, we encourage you to keep apprised of the status of the project by frequently checking the project website. Here you can also be able to access the recordings of the sessions from the summit, as well as the presentations and the handouts. Also, please continue to provide the project team with your questions, comments, or feedback on the sessions or on the project as a whole. The contact information for the project team is also available on the website. We want to thank all the presenters that gave us information during the summit. We appreciate you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to provide us this wonderful information that you provided. I also want to thank the project team from Metro Analytics, IHS Markit, Razor Communications, and QK4 for putting together the summit. It has been a lot of work behind the scenes to make the summit a success. And finally, I want to thank all of you for taking time out of your busy schedules to attend this summit. We look forward to seeing you at our next summit and hope you have a great rest of your day.
Excellent. Thank you, Jeremy. I'll turn it over to Chandler Duncan, the project manager on our consulting team from Metro Analytics, with some closing remarks, and then we'll take any questions.
I would just reiterate everything that Jeremy just said. On behalf of the whole project team, I would like to thank the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet and the Riverports Association for inviting us to have the opportunity to put this together and to work with everyone here and a lot of people who aren't here and making this possible and being able to continue to work with everyone here as all of this comes together. And just reiterating what Jeremy had pointed out, that please do send any further comments if there were things that came up at the summit that you'd like to provide input about, that you don't feel that you fully got to express. We're always taking input and feedback throughout the process continually. And if there are things that came up that occurred to you that you'd really like to see addressed at the next summit, particularly given that our topic next time will be on economic change and opportunities. We're already, thinking of, ideas and ways that we want to frame these issues. So please, if you continue to think about everything that's happened here, this is not the end, this is the beginning. And we would love to hear from you, and we look forward to having an ongoing dialogue. So please let us know if there's any way that we can help and support you in the process. And we really appreciate everyone's involvement and look forward to working together as we complete the project.
Excellent. Thank you, Chandler. We will open it up to questions. I see one that has appeared in the chat box, just asking what can we expect from the second summit. I think we, Chandler kind of touched on that with his remarks just now, talking about some of the needs and opportunities, conveying that, relating it again back to those economic opportunities as we move forward and the infrastructure needs that we have. Anything else there?
Yeah, I can be a little bit more specific. The kinds of things that you'll be seeing next time and how it relates to what we've seen here. If you recall, this time we've seen a lot about the commodities and the trading partners and the market information. Next time, we're going to be seeing some things about how that's going to change in the future. We're going to see about what are the growth markets for the Riverports. How might changes in the economy lead to some of that modal diversion? For those who were in the market presentation, for example, we talked about divertible commodities. Well, what are some of the things that might bring that diversion about? What are some of the things that we could do that might relate to that? We had some discussion this time about peer states and competitor states and what other states are doing and what some of the different programs are. The next summit, we're going to be talking about how can Kentucky position itself and what are some of the opportunities that we have that might be able to move the needle for Kentucky. We'll be talking next time about things like how changes in trade, COVID, and technology, how those things are going to be affecting the port system and the overall transportation system, and how we can take advantage of those things or protect ourselves from those things. So we're going to have a lot more strategic discussion, and that whole economic development discussion about, how can we take proactive steps in our economic development and our port our port marketing process to position ourselves. So it's going to be a very forward-looking opportunity, and those are the kinds of things that we expect to be doing in the sessions when we come back at our next summit.
Excellent, thank you. Let me bring up the chat box again. We did get a question here. Is there any opportunity to increase engagement with each Riverport Board of Directors in addition to the staff?
I think that's probably something that's an interesting piece of input. I think that is something that probably we as a research team should talk with the cabinet about. There is going to be another round of outreach because we do have successive rounds of that. And we have not yet determined the protocol for the next round of outreach. And so that's something that we can explore and look into, kind of seeing what that might look like. So it's
Excellent.
We appreciate the input.
Yeah, and as Tim Cahill, I think we all kind of echo your sentiment. Hopefully we'll have something in place to allow us to gather face-to-face versus virtual. It's always a good time, a little bit more productive to have those interactions face-to-face. So we will hope so. I'll open it up. If there's any other questions, you can feel free to take yourself off and mute and ask it.
Hey, just wanted to chime in. Craig Pritchard here. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Really, your first summit, in my view, really exceeded my expectations. I very much appreciate everyone's efforts. I'll be very interested to watch this move forward. And again, I just wanted to send my kudos to all.
Thank you, Greg. It was a good combined effort, and it made really productive with some input from all the attendees and the speakers. So I appreciate a nice combined effort here. So thank you, Greg. And not hearing anybody else, we will go ahead, and if I had a gavel, I would hammer it down. But we thank you for attending the first Kentucky Summit on economic roles of freight modes. We thank you for all your attendance, all your focus and your help as you came through and all the conversation. Again, just look out for the I think we put it in the chat box, and we'll be emailing out and making everyone aware that when the sessions and the recordings and all the material are out there. So we appreciate it, and thank you, and have a great day and stay safe.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Take care, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.